Dad, stop wasting my money on this garbage, Jason screamed, throwing the vintage bond paper into the trash can right in the middle of the crowded five-star restaurant. He pointed a finger at my face, trembling with rage. From tomorrow, your allowance is cut to 0. You stay in your room and you do not embarrass me again. I looked at my son, then at my daughter-in-law, Valerie, who was smirking behind her wine glass. I did not say a word. I simply walked away. But what Jason did not know was that the money he claimed I was wasting was never his. It was mine. All of it. The next morning when he woke up to buy his new Porsche, he would find his bank accounts empty, his credit cards frozen, and his CEO title revoked. And me. I would be gone, leaving behind nothing but that crumpled $50 bond. I am Conrad King, and this is how I taught my ungrateful son the hardest lesson of his life. If you enjoy stories about justice being served, please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments if you have ever dealt with ungrateful family members. The crystal chandeliers of the Emerald threw a golden light over the tables, but it felt like a spotlight of interrogation. This was the most expensive restaurant in Boston, the kind of place where a glass of water cost more than a typical lunch. We were there to celebrate my grandson Sammy turning 10. The room was filled with the city elite business partners of my son Jason's socialite friends of my daughter-in-law Valerie, and men in suits who measured their worth by the size of their watches. I sat at the edge of the table trying to make myself small. My suit was old, the fabric worn at the elbows, a stark contrast to the Italian silk Jason was wearing. He sat at the head of the table laughing loudly at a joke made by a hedge fund manager, pouring expensive champagne as if it were tap water. Grandpa Sammy whispered, pulling on my sleeve. His eyes were big and round, the only innocent thing in this room. Did you bring it? I smiled, feeling the familiar crinkle around my eyes. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket. My hand trembled slightly, not from age, but from a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I pulled out a small beige envelope. It was not much to look at. Inside was a $50 treasury bond. I had bought it the day Sammy was born 10 years ago. It was a tradition my own father had started. It was not about the money. It was about patience. It was about watching something grow slowly over time. It was about value. "Happy birthday, Sammy," I said softly, handing him the envelope. "This is for your future." Sammy reached for it, a genuine smile spreading across his face, but before his fingers could touch the paper, a hand snatched it away. It was Jason. He held the envelope up like it was a piece of dirty tissue. He ripped it open and pulled out the bond. A phone. He looked at it and let out a short, cruel laugh. $50, he announced loudly enough for the entire table to hear. The conversation around us died down. $50. Dad, are you serious? We are at the Emerald. The tip for the valet is more than $50. Jason, I said, keeping my voice low, trying to save what little dignity I had left. It is a bond. It matures. It teaches him the value of saving. Value. Jason scoffed. He crumpled the bond in his fist. You want to teach him value? Look around you, Dad. This dinner costs $10,000. That is value. You giving him this scrap of paper is not a gift. It is an insult. It is you being a cheap old man who still thinks it is 1970. He threw the crumpled ball of paper into the ice bucket where the champagne was cooling. Stop wasting my money on this garbage, he hissed. Valerie chimed in, leaning over to whisper to the woman next to her, but loud enough for me to hear. You have to forgive him. He is getting senile. We let him live with us out of charity, but he just does not understand how the modern world works. He is a drain on our resources, but what can we do? The guests chuckled, a polite, uncomfortable sound. They looked at me with pity. The poor old father living off his successful son. The leech. The burden. I looked at Sammy. He was looking down at his plate, his face red with shame. He wanted to cry, but he knew his mother would pinch him if he ruined the mood. I slowly pushed my chair back. The legs scraped against the marble floor, a harsh sound in the quiet room. "Where are you going?" Jason asked, annoyed. "We have not cut the cake yet. Do not make a scene." "I am going home," I said quietly. "I am tired. Suit yourself." Jason waved his hand dismissively. "Just do not expect the driver to take you. He is busy. You can take the bus. It is cheaper. Just your style." I walked out of the dining room, my back straight. I could feel their eyes on me. I could hear their whispers. I walked past the maitre d' who looked at my worn shoes with disdain. I walked out into the cool Boston night. But I did not go to the bus stop. I walked to the parking lot where my old Ford sedan was parked in the furthest corner, hidden away from the Ferraris and Lamborghinis, so it would not lower the property value of the lot. I had just unlocked the door when I heard heavy footsteps running behind me. It was Jason. For a second, a foolish, hopeful part of me thought he was coming to apologize. I thought maybe he realized he had gone too far, that maybe the son I raised was still in there somewhere, buried under the layers of arrogance and greed. "Give me the keys," he demanded, holding out his hand. "What?" I asked, confused. "The keys to the car, Dad. Give them to me." "Jason, this is my car. I bought this car 15 years ago. And who pays for the gas?" Jason stepped closer, looming over me. "Who pays for the insurance? Who pays for the repairs?" "I do. Everything you have is because of me. You live in my house. You eat my food. You drive a car that I pay to keep on the road. And tonight, you embarrassed me. You made me look cheap in front of the investors." He snatched the keys from my hand. "You are grounded," he said, and he was not joking. "From tomorrow, you stay in the house. You do not leave the estate. And that allowance of $400 a month. Cancelled. You do not need money. You have everything you need right there. If you are going to act like a child, I will treat you like one." I looked at him. I looked at the man standing before me in his $5,000 suit. I remembered the day he was born. I remembered holding him in my arms, promising him the world. I remembered 5 years ago when I sat him down in my office, the office of King Logistics, the company I built from a single truck into a shipping empire. I remembered signing the papers, handing him the CEO title. I remembered the only condition I had set: take care of the company. Jason, I had told him, and take care of me. I am tired. I want to rest. Treat me with respect, and everything I built will be yours. He had promised. He had cried. He had hugged me. And now 5 years later, he was standing in a parking lot, taking away my car keys because I gave his son a $50 bond. "You are making a mistake, Jason," I said, my voice steady. "The only mistake I made was not putting you in a nursing home sooner," he spat back. "Now walk. It is a long walk home. Maybe it will give you time to think about how lucky you are that I put up with you." He turned around and walked back toward the warm glow of the restaurant, twirling my keys on his finger. I stood there in the dark. The wind was biting. It was a 5-mile walk to the estate. I did not feel the cold. I did not feel the fatigue. I felt a strange sense of clarity. It was as if a fog had lifted. For 5 years, I had made excuses for him. I told myself it was the stress of the job. I told myself it was Valerie's influence. I told myself he would mature. But tonight, the denial died. I started walking. I did not walk like an old man. I walked with the rhythm of a man who had negotiated with union leaders on the docks of South Boston. I walked with the pace of a man who had stared down hostile takeovers. I reached the estate just after midnight. It was a sprawling mansion in Brookline with manicured lawns and a 12-foot iron gate. Jason and Valerie lived in the main house with its 10 bedrooms and heated floors. I lived in the servants' quarters, a small converted apartment in the basement near the boiler room. Valerie had suggested it, saying it would be easier for me, no stairs to climb. But I knew the truth. They wanted me close enough to use as a babysitter or a punching bag, but far enough away that they did not have to see me. I entered my room. It smelled of damp concrete. The furniture was old cast-offs from when they redecorated the main house. I sat on the edge of the single bed. I did not turn on the light. I did not need it. I reached down and took off my left shoe. I pulled out the insole. Underneath, taped securely to the heel, was a small black micro SD card. I peeled it off. This was my insurance. This was the lever I had prayed I would never have to pull. When I handed the company over to Jason, I had my lawyer Sullivan draft a very specific trust agreement. It was a revocable living trust. Jason thought he owned the shares. He thought he owned the house. He thought he owned the accounts. But he was only the beneficiary. I was the grantor, and I had retained the power to revoke everything at any time for any reason. We called it the Doomsday Clause. I walked over to the small dusty desk in the corner. I pulled out an old laptop that Jason thought was broken. It was not. It was a satellite-linked secure terminal that bypassed the house network entirely. I inserted the card. The screen glowed blue, illuminating my face. I typed in a sequence of numbers. Then I picked up a burner phone I had kept hidden in a hollowed-out book on the shelf. I dialed a number I had not called in 5 years. It rang once. Yes, a gravelly voice answered. It was Sullivan. He was awake. I knew he would be. Sullivan never slept. "It is Conrad," I said. There was a pause on the other end. Then Sullivan spoke, his voice devoid of surprise. "Is it time?" "It is time," I said. "Jason crossed the line tonight. He humiliated me. He hurt Sammy. And he told me to stop wasting his money." I heard the click of a lighter on the other end, then the exhale of cigar smoke. "So what are the instructions, Conrad?" "Execute the Doomsday Clause," I said, staring at the picture of my late wife, Catherine, on the desk. "I want it all gone, Sullivan. Freezing the assets is not enough. I want a total recall." "Understood," Sullivan said. "And the liquidity?" "Move it," I ordered. "Empty the operating accounts. Empty the personal checking. Empty the savings. Transfer the $12 million in liquid cash to the offshore holding in the Cayman Islands. Leave him with nothing but the change in his pockets." "And the house?" Sullivan asked. "It belongs to the trust," I said. "Eviction notice immediately." "Very well," Sullivan said. "It will be done by 8 a.m. "What about you?" "I am leaving," I said. "I am taking the bond, and I am disappearing." "Do you need extraction?" Sullivan asked. "No," I said. "I have a plan. Just make sure the accounts are dry before he buys his morning latte. Consider it done, old friend." I hung up. I closed the laptop. I did not pack clothes. I did not pack photos. I left everything that reminded me of the last 5 years of misery. I walked over to the trash can where I had thrown the crumpled $50 bond after I retrieved it from the restaurant ice bucket. I smoothed it out on the desk. It was stained with water and wrinkled, but it was still valid. I placed it in the center of the pillow on my bed. Then I took a piece of paper and a pen. I wrote a single note. "You said it was your money, Jason. You were wrong. It was never your money. It was mine. And now I am taking it back." I left the note next to the bond. I walked out of the basement door and into the night. I walked past the garage where Jason's collection of luxury cars slept. I walked past the pool where Valerie threw her lavish parties. I walked out of the gate, and I did not look back. By the time the sun rose over Boston, my son would wake up a poor man, and I would be a ghost. The game had just begun. The morning sun hit the windows of the master bedroom at 7 a.m. sharp. I was already miles away watching the city wake up from a diner stool, but in my mind, I could see exactly what was happening at the mansion. Jason loved his morning routine. He would wake up, stretch in his Egyptian cotton sheets, and ring the bell for coffee. Usually I was the one who brought it. I was the one who ground the beans, who frothed the milk just the way he liked it. But this morning the bell would ring and there would be silence. I imagined him waiting, ringing it again, getting annoyed, throwing the covers off and storming down to the kitchen, expecting to find me there, expecting to yell at me for being slow. But the kitchen would be dark, the coffee machine cold. He would probably curse. He would grab his phone to call the office to demand that his assistant send a car because he had taken my keys and he did not want to drive himself. That was when the first domino would fall. At the headquarters of King Logistics, the main server room hummed. At 8:01 a.m., a command script executed. It was a digital tidal wave. Jason was standing in his kitchen, in his silk robe, tapping on his phone. He opened his banking app. Face ID recognized him. The little loading wheel spun. And then the numbers appeared. Checking account 0. Savings account 0. Investment portfolio locked. Access denied. Contact administrator. I imagined the blood draining from his face. He would think it was a glitch, a banking error. He would swipe down to refresh. 0. He would try his credit card app. The black card with the unlimited limit, the one Valerie used to buy handbags that cost more than cars. Status canceled by grantor. I took a sip of my black diner coffee. It tasted better than anything I had drunk in years. It tasted like freedom. Back at the mansion, Valerie would be in the shower. She liked her showers scalding hot. But the utilities for the estate were not in Jason's name. They were in the name of the trust. And Sullivan was efficient. I imagined the water pressure dying, the lights flickering and going out, the heated floors turning cold. Valerie screaming, "Jason, what is going on?" Jason running up the stairs, panic rising in his throat. "Babe, the bank app is down," Jason would yell, "and the power is out." "Call the electric company." Valerie would shriek, wrapped in a towel dripping wet. "Call your father, tell him to fix the fuse." That is when they would remember. They would run down to the basement. They would kick open the door to my room, ready to scream, ready to blame, ready to demand. And they would find the silence. They would see the empty bed. They would see the wrinkled $50 bond on the pillow. And they would read the note. It was never your money. I checked my watch. It was 8:30. Right about now, Jason would be trying to call Sullivan. He would be demanding answers. He would be threatening to sue. And Sullivan would be sitting in his leather chair, calmly explaining that under Section 14, Paragraph B of the King Family Trust, the grantor reserved the right to remove any beneficiary who displayed gross misconduct or moral turpitude, publicly humiliating the founder at a birthday party. That counted as gross misconduct. I paid for my coffee with cash. I tipped the waitress $20. "Keep the change," I said. She looked at me surprised. "Thanks, sweetie. You have a good day." "Oh, I will," I said, standing up and putting on my coat. "I am going to have the best day of my life." I walked out of the diner and hailed a taxi. "To the airport," I said. "Where are you flying to?" the driver asked. "I am not flying anywhere," I said. "I am going to meet a friend in the private hangar." Because while Jason and Valerie were running around their dark, cold mansion, trying to figure out how to buy groceries with $0, I had a meeting to attend. I had to prepare for the next phase. Taking the money was just the beginning. Now I had to watch them fall. And I wanted a front row seat. I arrived at the private airfield on the outskirts of the city. The guard at the gate recognized me immediately. "Mr. King," he said, saluting. "It has been a long time." "It has been too long, Mike," I said. He opened the gate. The taxi drove me to Hangar 4. Inside, sitting on the polished concrete floor, was my Gulfstream G650. Jason had wanted to sell it. He said it was too old, that we needed the newer model. I had told him no. I told him it was a company asset. But legally, it belonged to me personally. Sullivan was waiting by the stairs of the plane. He looked impeccable in his charcoal suit, holding a tablet. "It is done," Sullivan said as I approached. "Total wipeout?" I asked. "Complete." Sullivan nodded. "His personal accounts are drained. The company accounts are locked. He cannot even buy a pack of gum. And the eviction notice is being served by the sheriff as we speak." "Good," I said. "What about the boy?" Sullivan asked. "Sammy." The question hit me hard. Sammy was the only innocent one in this war. "We watch him," I said. "We make sure he is safe. But he needs to see this. He needs to see what happens when people live without values. It is the only way to save him from becoming like his father." Sullivan nodded. "We have eyes on the house. Private security." I walked up the stairs of the plane. I turned back to look at the city skyline in the distance. Somewhere in that concrete jungle, my son was realizing that his kingdom was built on sand. "Take us up," I told the pilot. "Where to, sir?" "New York," I said. "I have a war room to set up." As the plane taxied down the runway, I pulled out the tablet Sullivan had given me. It was linked to the security cameras inside the mansion. I saw Jason in the living room. He was throwing a vase against the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. Valerie was crying on the sofa, holding her phone, probably trying to call her rich friends for help, but finding out that fair-weather friends disappear when the credit cards stop working. And there in the corner was Sammy. He was sitting on the floor, holding the $50 bond I had left. He was not crying. He was looking at it. "Hold on to it, Sammy," I whispered as the plane lifted off the ground. "That paper is worth more than everything else in that house combined." The engine roared and Boston fell away beneath me. Phase 1 was complete. The money was gone. Phase 2 was about to begin. The collapse. I leaned back in the leather seat and closed my eyes. I was not Conrad the poor old man anymore. I was Conrad King, the shark of the Atlantic. And the water was full of blood. I sat in the leather seat of the Gulfstream cruising at 40,000 feet and opened the secure app on my tablet. The camera feed from the mansion kitchen was high definition. It was 7:30 in the morning. The show was about to start. Jason walked into the frame. He was wearing his silk pajamas, the ones that cost more than my entire monthly allowance. He looked disheveled. He rubbed his eyes and looked toward the coffee machine. It was a $10,000 Italian espresso maker that required a degree in engineering to operate. For 5 years, I was the only one who touched it. I cleaned it. I filled it. I calibrated the pressure. Every morning at 7:15, I would have a double-shot latte waiting for him on the marble island. But today the machine was cold. The lights were off. There was no cup. There was no steam. I saw Jason frown. He tapped the machine aggressively. He looked around the empty kitchen. "Dad," he yelled. His voice was tinny through the tablet speakers, but the anger was unmistakable. "Dad, where is my coffee?" He waited. Silence answered him. He stormed over to the intercom system on the wall. He pressed the button for the basement. "Dad, pick up. Stop playing games. I need caffeine and I need the car brought around." Nothing. He slammed his hand against the wall. "Useless old man," he muttered. He pulled his phone from his pocket, probably to call the maid service to send someone over immediately, because the idea of making his own coffee was foreign to him. But as he unlocked his screen, a notification banner dropped down. I saw him freeze. It was not a text from a friend. It was a red alert from the corporate banking system. I knew exactly what it said because I had programmed the transfer to execute at 8:01 sharp. Alert. Liquidity crisis. Unauthorized withdrawal. Amount $18 million. Recipient offshore holdings looted. Authorized by the founder. I saw the color drain from his face. He dropped his hand to the counter to steady himself. He swiped into the app, his fingers trembling. He was looking at the operating capital, the payroll account, the reserve funds. Empty. 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 He started tapping furiously, trying to reverse the transaction, trying to call the bank. But the bank was not going to answer him. The bank answered to the trust, and the trust answered to me. Jason dialed a number. It was probably the chief financial officer. I could imagine the panic on the other end of the line. "What do you mean it is gone?" Jason screamed into the phone. "It is $18 million. It cannot just vanish." "Who authorized it?" "My father." "That is impossible. He is retired. He is senile. He does not have the access codes." He stopped. He listened. "He is the grantor," Jason whispered. The phone slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the counter. Grantor. The word hung in the air. It meant I was not just a retired old man living in the basement. It meant I was the god of his financial universe, and I had just turned off the sun. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the house so loud it distorted the audio on my tablet. It came from the second floor. Jason looked up, eyes wide. That was Valerie. I switched the camera view to the master suite hallway. The door to the bathroom flew open. Valerie stumbled out, wrapped in a towel, her hair covered in shampoo suds. She was dripping wet and shivering violently. "Jason," she shrieked. "The water, it just stopped. It was hot and then it just cut off. I have soap in my eyes." Jason ran to the bottom of the stairs. "Babe, calm down," he yelled up. "There is a problem with the accounts." "I do not care about the accounts," Valerie yelled back. "I care about my shower. Fix it. Call the plumber. Call your father. Tell him to go down to the boiler room." "He is not there," Jason shouted. "What do you mean he is not there?" Valerie wiped her eyes, stinging from the soap. She grabbed her phone from the hallway table. "Fine. I am booking the flight to Paris now. I cannot deal with this. I am going to the spa in George V, and you can fix this mess while I am gone." She tapped her screen. I watched her face. It went from annoyance to confusion to absolute horror. "Declined," she said. Her voice was a whisper. "Try another card," Jason said, running up the stairs 2 at a time. "I did," Valerie said. "The platinum, the black card, the joint account. Declined, declined, card reported stolen, stolen." Jason reached the top of the stairs, breathless. "It says the account holder reported the card stolen and requested an immediate freeze." Valerie looked at him, her eyes wide with terror. "Jason, who is the account holder?" Jason leaned against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor. He put his head in his hands. "My dad," he said. Valerie laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound. "Your dad. The old man who wears shoes from Walmart. The man who asks for permission to buy toothpaste. Jason, do not be stupid. Fix this." "He shut it down," Jason said, looking up at her. "He shut it all down, Valerie. The company, the house, the cards, the water, it is all in his name. It was always in his name." "No," Valerie shook her head, water dripping from her hair onto the expensive Persian rug. "No, we own this. We are the kings." "We are nothing," Jason whispered. "Without him, we are nothing." Suddenly, the lights in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, and then the house plunged into darkness. The emergency backup generator should have kicked in, but I had disabled the automatic transfer switch before I left. I watched through the infrared mode of the camera. They were 2 silhouettes sitting in the dark in a multi-million-dollar mansion that had just become a tomb. Jason stood up. "We have to find him. He cannot have gone far. He does not have a car." I took his keys. They scrambled in the dark using their phone flashlights like lifeline. They ran down the stairs, past the silent kitchen, and threw open the door to the basement. I switched the camera feed to my room. They burst in the beams of their flashlights, cutting through the gloom. They tore the sheets off the bed. They opened the small closet, finding it empty. They looked for the stash of cash I usually kept in a jar for emergencies, but that was gone too. And then Jason saw it. The beam of his light landed on the pillow. There it was. The wrinkled $50 bond he had thrown in the trash the night before. He picked it up. His hands were shaking so hard the paper rustled. He read the note I had left. It was never your money. Jason let out a roar of frustration and tore the note in half. He kicked the bed frame. He threw the bond against the wall. He is gone, Valerie whispered. She looked around the small, dingy room, seeing it for the first time, not as a place to store an unwanted relative, but as the control center of their destruction. He left us. He cannot leave us, Jason shouted, pacing the small room like a caged animal. He needs us. He is old. He is weak. He probably just walked to the diner. I will find him. I will drag him back here and I will make him turn the power back on. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number for the private security firm that patrolled the neighborhood. This is Jason King, he barked. I have a missing person. My father. Yes, the old man. He wandered off. He is confused. I need you to find him and bring him back. He is a danger to himself. I closed the tablet cover. He still did not get it. He still thought he was in control. He thought this was a tantrum. He thought he could bully me back into submission. He had no idea that he was no longer the CEO of King Logistics. He was just a man standing in the dark in a house he did not own, wearing pajamas he could no longer afford. I looked out the window of the plane. The clouds were thick below us. Sullivan handed me a glass of water. They are in the dark, I asked. Pitch black, Sullivan replied. Good. Let them sit in it for a while. Hunger and cold have a way of clarifying the mind. But I knew Jason. He would not give up that easily. He would not reflect. He would attack. He would try to find me, not to apologize, but to force me to sign the rights back over. He would try to use the law. He would try to use force. He would try to use Sammy. And that was exactly what I was counting on. Because when you corner a rat, it bites. And when it bites, it exposes its neck. I took a sip of water. The game had moved from the board to the street. And I had cleared the board. Now we would see who could survive the winter. I watched on the tablet screen as the call to private security ended abruptly. The guard on the other end must have told Jason what I had instructed Sullivan to convey, that Mr. Conrad King was not a missing person, but a free man who had voluntarily vacated the premises. Jason stared at the phone in his hand, as if it had betrayed him, before hurling it onto the thin mattress of my bed. The silence in the basement was heavy, pressing down on them, like the tons of concrete and steel of the mansion above. This room, my home for the last 5 years, was barely larger than the walk-in closet Jason had for his shoes. The walls were bare concrete, painted a sterile white that had yellowed with age and dampness. There was no carpet, just cold linoleum that sapped the heat from your feet. Jason stood in the center of the room, his chest heaving. He looked around, really looked, perhaps for the first time. He was searching for me, yes, but he was also searching for the leverage he thought he had. He was looking for the old man who needed him. He was looking for the father who was too weak to leave. But the room was scrubbed clean. I had been meticulous. Where is his stuff? Jason muttered. He yanked open the small particle board wardrobe in the corner. It rocked on its uneven legs. Empty. I had taken my 3 suits, my shirts, and the winter coat I had bought at a thrift store. There were no hangers left rattling on the rail. He pulled out the drawers of the small bedside table. Empty. No medication bottles. No reading glasses. No half-read paperbacks. I had erased myself from their lives as completely as I had erased the money from their accounts. He must have hidden it, Jason said, his voice rising in panic. He has a stash. Old people always have a stash. Cash. Gold coins. Something. He didn't just walk out of here with nothing. I watched as my son, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, dropped to his knees on the dirty floor. He began to feel under the bed frame. He lifted the mattress, flipping it over with a grunt of exertion. Dust motes danced in the beam of his flashlight. Nothing. He crawled to the loose floorboard near the radiator, the one I used to complain about, because it squeaked. He dug his manicured fingernails into the gap and pried it up, snapping the wood. He shone the light into the dark cavity underneath. Just dirt and old pipes. He is gone, Jason, Valerie said from the doorway. She was hugging herself, her lips blue from the cold. There is nothing here. He planned this. Don't you see he didn't just leave in a huff? He planned this for days, maybe weeks. Jason stood up, wiping the dust from his silk pajamas. His face was a mask of fury and confusion. He walked back to the desk, the only piece of furniture he hadn't overturned yet. There, sitting in the pool of light from his flashlight, was the bond. I zoomed in on the camera feed. The $50 Treasury bond. The edges were soft from wear, the paper stained from the wine and ice of the night before. I had smoothed it out carefully, pressing it flat with the palm of my hand before I left. It sat there like an accusation. Jason picked it up. He held it delicately this time, not like trash. He stared at the intricate engraving, the government seal, the face of the president. $50. To him, it was less than a rounding error. To me, it was the seed of an empire. And next to it, the note. He read it again, his lips moving silently. Your money, no. Jason. It was never your money. He slammed his fist onto the desk. It is my money, he screamed at the empty walls. I earned it. I sat in that chair. I took the meetings. I signed the deals. He was shouting at a ghost. He was trying to convince the concrete that he was a king, but the concrete knew better. The concrete knew he was just a tenant who had forgotten to pay his rent in respect. He swept his arm across the desk, sending the note fluttering to the floor. But he kept the bond in his hand. He crumpled it, then stopped. He smoothed it out again. Why was it regret? No. It was desperation. It was the sudden, terrifying realization that this piece of paper, this $50 promise from the government, might be the only liquid asset he had left in the world. Valerie stepped into the room. She looked at the overturned mattress, the empty wardrobe, the bleakness of the space. Is this how he lived? She whispered. She looked at the single narrow window high up on the wall, barred with iron. She looked at the exposed pipes in the ceiling. We put him in a dungeon, Jason, she said, her voice trembling. Shut up, Jason snapped. It was good enough for him. He said he liked it. He said it was quiet. He lied, Valerie said. She looked at the camera lens in the corner of the ceiling, a small black dome she had probably never noticed before. Or maybe she just felt the weight of being watched. He lied about everything. He wasn't senile. He wasn't weak. He was waiting. Jason turned to her. We don't need him. I can fix this. I just need to get to the office. I need to talk to legal. Sullivan can't do this. There are laws. There are rights. He has the codes. Jason. Valerie screamed, her composure finally cracking. He is the grantor. Do you know what that means? I looked it up while you were playing hide and seek with the security guard. It means he is God. It means we are trespassing in our own house. Jason looked at her, then back at the empty room. The reality was closing in. The cold was seeping into his bones. The adrenaline of the anger was fading, replaced by the hollow ache of fear. He looked at the bond one last time. He didn't throw it away. He folded it. He folded it carefully into a small square and put it in the pocket of his pajama bottoms. Let's go, he said, his voice low. Where? Valerie asked. To the office, Jason said. We walk. They turned and left the room, leaving the door swinging on its hinges. I watched the empty space for a moment longer. The overturned mattress, the dust, the silence. It was a tomb, yes. But it wasn't mine anymore. It was the tomb of their arrogance. I closed the app on my tablet. The plane banked, turning south. Jason was going to walk to the office. That was a 5-mile hike in Italian loafers that weren't made for pavement. He would arrive sweaty, tired, and desperate, and he would find the doors locked. But I knew him. He wouldn't stop there. He would go to the one place he thought he could still exert power. He would go to the lawyers. He would try to fight me with paper. He didn't know it. I had bought the paper factory 40 years ago. I signaled the flight attendant. Breakfast, sir, she asked. Yes, I said. Coffee. Black. And bring me the phone. I need to make a call to the district attorney. Because emptying the accounts was just the opening move. Now it was time to expose the rot. It was time to show the world that the CEO of King Logistics wasn't just broke. He was a criminal. The real storm was just beginning. It took Jason nearly 2 hours to reach the glass and steel tower in the financial district. I tracked his progress via the GPS in his phone, which he had foolishly forgotten was also paid for by the company plan. He arrived at the offices of Sullivan and Moore, looking like a man who had survived a shipwreck. His Italian loafers were scuffed, his hair was matted with sweat, and his eyes were wide with a manic desperation. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, whom Jason had rudely dismissed countless times over the years, looked up in alarm as he burst through the double glass doors. Mr. King, she stammered, reaching for the phone. You cannot be in here. You do not have an appointment. Get out of my way, Jason barked, pushing past her desk. He stormed down the hallway toward the corner office. He did not knock. He threw the heavy oak door open so hard it banged against the wall. Sullivan was waiting for him. My old friend was sitting behind his massive mahogany desk, the one I had given him 30 years ago after we won the union lawsuits. He was reading a file, calmly sipping a cup of tea. He did not flinch. He did not look surprised. He simply closed the folder and placed his hands on top of it. Fix it, Jason screamed, slamming his hands down on the desk. Fix it now, Sullivan. The accounts are frozen. The power is out. My father has gone insane. He thinks he can steal my company. Sullivan looked at him over the rim of his reading glasses. His expression was not one of sympathy. It was the cold, clinical look of a mortician examining a cadaver. Sit down, Mr. King, Sullivan said quietly. I will not sit down, Jason spat. I am the CEO of King Logistics. I order you to unfreeze my assets. I order you to find my father and have him committed. He is a danger to himself and others. Sullivan sighed. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He slid it across the polished wood. You are not the CEO, Jason Sullivan said. Not anymore. What are you talking about? This is a formal notice of termination, Sullivan explained, his voice devoid of emotion. Effective at 8:01 this morning, the board of directors convened an emergency meeting via secure line. The grantor of the King Family Trust exercised his voting rights. You have been removed from your position for cause. For cause, Jason laughed, a hysterical, high-pitched sound. What cause? I made this company millions. You spent millions, Sullivan corrected him. You treated the corporate accounts like a personal piggy bank. We have the records, Jason. The cars, the vacations, the jewelry for your wife, the payoffs to keep your mistresses quiet. It is all here. Jason went pale. He thought those transactions were buried. He thought he was smarter than the auditors. He did not know that Sullivan had been the auditor all along. But that does not matter now, Sullivan continued. What matters is the trust. He stood up and walked over to the window looking out over the city. Your father built this empire with his bare hands, Jason. He created the trust to protect it. And he included a specific clause, a clause I wrote myself. It states that the grantor may revoke all privileges if the beneficiary proves himself unworthy. Unworthy, Jason whispered. I am his son. Being a son is a biological accident. Sullivan turned back to face him. Being an heir is a privilege. You lost that privilege last night when you threw a $50 bond into the trash. You insulted the man who gave you everything. Jason stood up, shaking. He can't do this. I will sue. I will take him to court. I have rights, possessions. Possessions, Sullivan raised an eyebrow. Let us talk about possessions. The house in Brookline, the cars in the garage, the furniture, the art on the walls, even the phone in your pocket. What about them? They are all property of the trust, Sullivan said. And since you are no longer a beneficiary, you are currently trespassing on private property. Jason froze. I have the eviction order here. Sullivan tapped the folder. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. You and your wife. If you are not gone by noon tomorrow, the sheriff will remove you by force. And Jason, do not try to take anything. We have cataloged every item in that house. If a single silver spoon is missing, I will have you arrested for theft. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment the reality truly hit him. He was not just fired. He was homeless. You are bluffing, Jason hissed. My father would never do this. He is weak. He loves me. He loved the son he thought you were, Sullivan said softly. But he hates the man you have become. Jason's face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. The veins in his neck bulged. He let out a guttural roar and lunged across the desk. You traitor, he screamed, reaching for Sullivan's throat. You conspired with him. I will kill you. Sullivan did not move. He did not have to. Before Jason's fingers could touch the fabric of Sullivan's suit, the side door to the office burst open. 2 men stepped in. I knew them well. Mike and Dave. They were former linebackers I had hired as company security years ago. They were loyal to the paycheck, and the paycheck now came from me. Mike grabbed Jason by the back of his jacket and the belt of his trousers. Dave grabbed his arms. Get off me, Jason shrieked, kicking his legs in the air like a toddler. Do you know who I am? I am Jason King. You are a trespasser, Mike grunted. They dragged him backward. Jason's heels dragged across the expensive carpet, leaving scuff marks. Sullivan watched him go, adjusting his cuffs. Good day, Mr. King, Sullivan called out. Do not forget to leave your key card at the front desk. They hauled him down the hallway, past the staring secretaries, past the shocked junior partners. Jason was screaming obscenities, threatening to fire everyone, threatening to burn the building down. They reached the elevator. They did not wait for it. They took him to the stairwell. I switched the camera feed to the lobby security cam. A moment later, the side exit doors flew open. Jason stumbled out, propelled by a final shove from Mike. He fell hard onto the concrete sidewalk, scraping his hands and tearing the knee of his expensive suit pants. He lay there for a moment, gasping for air. Passers-by stepped around him, looking down with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. A man in a suit lying in the gutter. It was a pathetic sight. He slowly pushed himself up. He looked at the building. He looked at the glass doors that were now locked against him. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out his phone. He probably wanted to call Valerie, to tell her to pack, to tell her it was over. But as he held the phone up, it went black. Remote wipe complete. Service terminated. He stared at the dead black screen. He screamed a sound of pure frustration and smashed the phone onto the pavement, shattering it into a dozen pieces. Now he truly had nothing. No money, no home, no communication, I watched from 30,000 feet. It was brutal, yes, but it was necessary. Jason had spent 40 years being protected from the world. He had never felt the cold pavement. He had never felt the sting of rejection. Now he was feeling it all at once. I picked up my satellite phone and dialed Sullivan. "Are you all right, old friend?" I asked. "Never better," Sullivan replied. "He has a strong grip, though." He almost wrinkled my tie. "He is on the street," I asked. "On the pavement," Sullivan confirmed. "He just broke his phone." "Good," I said. "Now the real test begins. Let us see if his wife sticks around when the castle crumbles." I knew the answer to that. Valerie was a survivor. She was a remora fish attached to a shark. When the shark died, the remora didn't mourn. It looked for a new host. Jason was about to find out that the love of his life was just another rental he could no longer afford. I signaled the pilot. "Change of plans," I said. "Do not land in New York yet." "Where to, sir?" "Fly over the Hamptons," I said. "I want to check on my other properties." Because while Jason was hitting rock bottom, I was just getting started. I had stripped him of his present. Now I was going to dismantle his future, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered with a rhythmic buzzing sound that sounded like a dying insect. It was the kind of place where people went when they did not want to be found, or when the world had decided it no longer wanted them. It was situated 10 miles outside the city limits next to a highway that smelled of diesel fumes and burnt rubber. This was where the King dynasty had fallen. I sat in the war room I had set up in the Hamptons, monitoring the situation through the digital breadcrumbs Jason left behind. He had sold his Patek Philippe watch at a pawn shop 3 blocks from the office. The watch was worth $50,000. The pawnbroker, seeing the desperation in Jason's eyes and the dirt on his suit, gave him $400 cash. Jason took it. He had no choice. That $400 bought them one night in room 104. I imagined the smell of the room. Stale cigarette smoke, industrial strength cleaner, and the metallic tang of despair. The carpet would be sticky. The sheets would be thin and rough, so unlike the 600 thread count Egyptian cotton they were used to. Jason sat on the edge of the sagging bed, staring at the wall. His suit was ruined. His face was pale. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. Valerie stood by the window looking out at the parking lot through the gap in the cheap curtains. She was still wearing her designer dress, but now it looked like a costume from a play that had been canceled. She was not crying anymore. Her tears had dried up hours ago, replaced by a cold, hard fury. "You are useless," she said without turning around. Her voice was flat, cutting through the humid air of the room. Jason did not answer. He just kept staring at the water stain on the wallpaper. "Did you hear me?" Jason. Valerie turned to face him. "I said you are useless. I married a king. I married a CEO. I married a man who owned the city. And look at you now. You are nothing. You are a beggar sitting in a roach motel." Jason looked up, his eyes red and hollow. "It is temporary, Valerie. I will fix it. I just need to talk to him. I just need to make him understand." "He hates you," Valerie spat. She walked over to the bed and loomed over him. "He hates you because you are weak. And he is right. You let him do this. You let an old man living in a basement take everything from us. You should have put him in a home years ago. You should have declared him incompetent the moment he handed you the keys, but you were too soft." "I loved him," Jason whispered. "And look where that got you," Valerie laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Love does not pay for room service, Jason. Love does not buy first-class tickets to Paris. I did not marry you for love." The words hung in the air, sucking the oxygen out of the room. Jason looked at her, blinking slowly, as if he could not process the language she was speaking. "What did you say?" "Oh, grow up." "Jason," Valerie rolled her eyes. "Do not look at me with those puppy dog eyes. You knew what this was. I was beautiful. You were rich. It was a transaction. I gave you a trophy wife to hang on your arm and you gave me a lifestyle. That was the deal. And now you have breached the contract. You are broke, which means I am free. She walked over to her handbag, which she had thrown onto the scratched dresser. She pulled out a phone. Not the one that had been cut off. A second phone. A burner. I watched the signal activate on my monitor. Sullivan had flagged this device months ago, but I had told him to let it run. I wanted to see where the rats were hiding their cheese. "What are you doing?" Jason asked, standing up, his legs shaky. "I am leaving," Valerie said, tapping furiously on the screen. "I am not staying in this dump with you. I have options, Jason. I have plans." "You have no money," Jason said. He shut down the cards, Valerie. He emptied the joint accounts. "We have nothing." "You have nothing," Valerie corrected him. "I have plenty." She held the phone up triumphantly. "For the last 3 years, I have been skimming," she said. "Every time you got a bonus, every time we flipped a property, every time you gave me an allowance for charity galas, I took a little off the top. I built a nest egg, Jason. An exit strategy. Because I always knew you would crash eventually. You are not your father. You never were." Jason stared at her, his mouth open. "How much?" $500,000. Valerie smiled. It was a predator smile. Sitting in an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Untouchable. "It is enough to get me to Europe. Enough to start over with someone who actually knows how to be a man." Someone. Jason stepped closer. "Who is someone?" "Marco," she said. "Her personal trainer. The one Jason paid $300 an hour to keep his wife in shape. He is waiting for me in Zurich. He has a villa. And now I have the cash to pay for the champagne." She looked at the phone screen, ready to initiate the transfer. Ready to book her ticket out of his life. "Goodbye, Jason," she said. "Enjoy the motel." She pressed the transfer button. I watched the data packet travel across the network. It hit the banking server in the Caymans. It requested authorization. And then my trap snapped shut. Valerie frowned. She tapped the screen again. The color drained from her face. It was the same look Jason had worn that morning in the kitchen. The look of total, absolute shock. "What is this?" she whispered. "What is it?" Jason asked, a bitter hope rising in his voice. "It says account frozen," she stammered. "It says funds seized by the King Family Trust. Authorization code 001. She looked up at Jason, her eyes wide with terror. "He found it," she whispered. "The old man found it." Jason started to laugh. It was a low, rumbling laugh that built into a hysterical cackle. He sat back down on the bed, clutching his stomach. "He blocked you," he wheezed. "He blocked your exit strategy." Valerie screamed. She threw the burner phone against the wall, shattering it. She fell to her knees, tearing at her perfectly styled hair. "My money. It was my money. I stole it fair and square." "It was never your money," Jason said, his voice cold and dead. "It was his money. It was always his money. Even the money you stole from me was his money." He looked at his wife, the woman he had showered with diamonds and cars. He saw her for the first time. He saw the greed etched into the lines of her face. He saw the contempt in her eyes. "So you are stuck here," Jason said. "With me. With the beggar. With the failure. And Marco will have to wait in Zurich alone." Valerie looked at him with pure hatred. "I will leave anyway. I will hitchhike. I will sell my body. I will do anything to get away from you." "Go ahead," Jason gestured to the door. "The highway is right there. But it is cold outside, Valerie. And those heels are not made for walking." She slumped against the dresser, defeated. She slid down to the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, sobbing not for the loss of her husband, but for the loss of her $500,000 golden parachute. I watched them from my screen. Two people who had everything now reduced to fighting over scraps in a room that cost $40 a night. They had hit the bottom, or so they thought. But I knew something they did not. I knew that the despair of this night would breed desperation, and desperation makes people do reckless things. Jason was not going to accept this. He was going to try to fight back. And since he could not fight me with money, he would try to fight me with the only thing he had left, his bloodline. He would come for Sammy. He would try to use the boy as a pawn, as leverage, to force me to open the accounts. I picked up the phone and called the private security detail I had stationed outside my grandson's boarding school. Double the guard, I ordered. No one gets near that boy. Not his father, not his mother, no one but me. Because the night was dark, but the dawn was coming. And when the sun rose, Jason King would realize that he had not just lost his fortune, he had lost his soul. And I was coming to collect the debt. The sun had not yet risen over the highway when Jason and Valerie decided that if they could not be rich, they would be dangerous. I was monitoring them through a listening device Sullivan's team had managed to plant in their motel room while they were arguing with the front desk clerk over the bill. The audio feed was crackly, but the intent was crystal clear. Desperation strips away the veneer of civilization, and what was left of my son was something primal and ugly. We cannot fight him with lawyers. Jason paced the cramped room, his voice jagged with lack of sleep. Sullivan has the courts tied up. The accounts are locked tight. By the time we get a hearing, we will be starving in the street. We need a shortcut. What kind of shortcut? Valerie asked from the corner where she was nursing a cup of stale vending machine coffee. He is the grantor Jason. He holds all the cards. He is 72 years old, Jason snapped. He is an old man living alone. We do not need to beat him in court. We just need to control him. I leaned closer to the speaker in my war room. I wanted to hear this. I wanted to hear the exact moment my son decided to cross the line from ungrateful to criminal. We get him declared incompetent, Jason said. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. We find him. We grab him. We say he is having a breakdown, that he wandered off, that he is a danger to himself. And then what? Valerie asked. Then we take him to Dr. Vane, Jason replied. I knew the name. Dr. Vane was a disgraced psychiatrist who operated out of a strip mall clinic on the South Side. He had lost his license twice for overprescribing opioids, but he always found a way back. He was the kind of doctor who would sign a death certificate for a living man if the price was right. We take him to Vane. Jason continued, the excitement building in his voice. We pump him full of Thorazine. We make him compliant. We put a pen in his hand and we guide his signature on a power of attorney transfer. Once I have that signature, I reverse the trust. I fire Sullivan. I take it all back. And then Valerie asked, her voice devoid of any moral objection, only practical concern. Then we put him in a home, Jason said coldly. A secure facility, one with high walls and no visitors. We keep him medicated. He spends the rest of his days drooling at a wall and we get our lives back. It was a solid plan, evil but solid. It relied on the one thing they thought they had on their side, my age. To the outside world, a sudden disappearance followed by an erratic financial behavior could easily look like dementia. But they had a problem. They did not know where I was. I need a bloodhound, Jason said. Someone dirty. Someone who does not ask questions about why a son wants to bag and tag his own father. He made a call from the prepaid burner phone he had bought at the gas station. He called a man named Russo. I knew Russo too. He was a private investigator who had been kicked off the force for planting evidence. He was cheap, he was brutal, and he was exactly the kind of man Jason would attract. Find him. Jason ordered into the phone. He is in the city somewhere. Check the private airfields. Check the hotels. I do not care what it costs. I will pay you when I get the trust back. Just find him and hold him down until I get there. I sat back in my chair. Jason was escalating. He was not just trying to survive anymore, he was hunting me. He was planning to strip my mind to save his wallet. But Russo would need time to find me. My security was tight. My digital footprint was non-existent. Jason knew that. He knew I was a ghost. He needed a way to make the ghost manifest. He needed bait. He loves the kid, Valerie said suddenly. That is his weak spot. He blew up his entire life because you threw away that $50 bond for Sammy. Jason went silent. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head, grinding against the rust of his morality. Sammy, he whispered. If he thinks Sammy is in trouble, Valerie said, he will come out of hiding. He will come running. I felt a chill go through me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning of the plane. They left the motel 20 minutes later in a rented compact car paid for with the cash they had pawned. They headed straight for St. Jude's Academy. I picked up my phone to call the security detail I had stationed at the school, but I was too late. The bureaucracy of the legal system was moving too slow. The restraining orders Sullivan had filed were still sitting on a judge's desk waiting for a signature. Legally, Jason was still the father. Legally, he had the right to pick up his son. I watched the footage from the school security cameras Sullivan hacked into. Jason pulled up to the curb. He did not go into the office. He waited by the fence near the playground where the fourth graders were having recess. He whistled. Sammy looked up from where he was trading cards with a friend. He saw his father. He smiled. He was 10 years old. He did not know his father was a monster. He just saw his dad. Sammy ran over to the fence. Jason reached over and lifted him up, pulling him over the wrought iron bars before the playground monitor could even shout. "Hey, buddy," Jason said, putting him in the back seat of the car. "We have a family emergency. We have to go." By the time the school security guard reached the fence, the car was peeling away. They did not take him far. They drove to a desolate park near the river. I tracked them via the burner phone's GPS. I dispatched my team, but they were 20 minutes out. Jason pulled the car over. He turned around in the seat. He held up his phone. "Okay, Sammy," he said. "I need you to do something for Daddy. Grandpa is lost. He is sick in the head, and he ran away. We need to find him." "Where is he?" Sammy asked, looking scared. "We do not know." Jason said, "But if you send him a message, maybe he will see it." "I need you to cry, Sammy. I need you to look really sad." "I am sad," Sammy said, his lip trembling. "I want Grandpa." "Good," Jason said. "Use that. Look at the camera. Beg him. Scream for him." He hit record. Sammy looked into the lens. He looked confused and terrified. "Grandpa," he said softly, "please come home. Daddy says you are sick." "Cut," Jason yelled. He reached back and grabbed Sammy's arm, squeezing it hard. "Not like that." Louder. More tears. "Act like you are dying, Sammy, or Grandpa is never coming back." He pinched the boy. Hard. Sammy yelped. Tears welled up in his eyes, real tears of pain and fear. "That is it," Jason said, hitting record again. "Now say it." Grandpa Sammy sobbed, the tears rolling down his cheeks. "Please. I am scared. Please come get me. Come home, Grandpa." Jason stopped recording. "Perfect," he muttered. 5 minutes later, the video hit social media. Jason posted it on every platform. He tagged the news stations. He tagged the police. "Please help," the caption read. "My father, Conrad King, is missing and suffering from severe dementia. He has cut off contact and is a danger to himself. His grandson is heartbroken. If you see him, please contact us immediately. He needs medical attention." I watched the video on my tablet. I watched my grandson crying real tears caused by his father's cruelty. I watched Jason weaponize the innocence of a child to lure me into a trap of chemical lobotomy. My hand crushed the glass of water I was holding. It shattered, slicing my palm, but I did not feel the pain. Sullivan looked at me, his face pale. "Conrad, do not go. It is a trap. They want you to show up so Russo can grab you." "I know it is a trap," I said, standing up, blood dripping from my hand onto the expensive carpet. "Then let the police handle it," Sullivan said. "We have the footage of him taking the boy. It is kidnapping." "Police take too long," I said, "and Jason is desperate. If I do not show up, he will hurt the boy again. He will escalate. He thinks I am a weak old man. He thinks I will come running blindly into his net." I walked to the door of the plane. "He is right," I said. "I am coming. But I am not coming to surrender Sullivan. I am coming to war. Get the car ready and call the hospital administrator. Tell him I am coming in for a checkup." "Why the hospital?" Sullivan asked, confused. "Because Jason wants to catch me," I said. "I am going to give him a target. I am going to let him think he has won. I am going to let him bring his dirty doctor and his fake papers and his thugs. And when he tries to put that needle in my arm, I am going to show him what happens when you try to bury a king." I looked at the frozen image of Sammy crying on the screen. "You made a mistake, Jason," I whispered. "You touched the one thing that was off limits. Now there is no mercy. Now there is only the end." The penthouse suite of the St. Regis Hotel was a fortress of solitude suspended 60 floors above the chaos of the city. The air was cool and scented with white tea, a stark contrast to the smell of mold and damp earth that had filled my nostrils for the last 5 years in that basement. Sullivan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the rain lash against the glass, but my eyes were locked on the 80-inch screen mounted on the wall. The video played on a loop. It was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook. The local news channels were already running it with breaking news banners. The headline was always the same. "Billionaire tycoon missing. Grandson pleads for return." I watched Sammy's face. I watched the way his lower lip trembled. I watched the terror in his eyes. The world saw a boy missing his grandfather. They saw a tragic family drama where the poor son was desperately trying to save his senile father. They saw love. But I saw the truth. I saw the hostage tape. "Freeze it," I said, my voice low and rough like gravel grinding in a mixer. Sullivan picked up the remote and paused the image. The frame froze on Sammy's face just as he let out a sob. "Zoom in," I ordered. On his arm, the left one, just above the elbow. The image expanded. The pixels sharpened. Technology was a beautiful and terrible thing. It could hide sins, but it could also expose them if you knew where to look. There it was. It was faint. A reddish-purple bruise blossoming on the pale skin of my grandson's arm. It was the shape of a crescent moon. It was the mark of a fingernail digging into flesh. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It started in my heart and froze my veins until I felt like a statue made of ice. I knew that mark. I knew exactly how much pressure it took to leave a bruise like that on a child. "That is not a cry for help," Sullivan whispered, stepping closer to the screen, his lawyerly detachment finally cracking. "That is pain." "He pinched him," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. My son pinched his own child to make him cry for the camera. He hurt my grandson to sell a lie. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked down at the city lights blurring in the rain. Somewhere down there, Jason was feeling triumphant. He probably thought he had won. He probably thought the public sympathy would force the police to find me and drag me back to his control. He thought he was playing a game of chess. He did not realize he had just flipped the board and pulled a knife. For 40 years, I had made excuses for Jason. I had blamed his mother's death. I had blamed the boarding schools. I had blamed myself for working too hard. I had tolerated his greed, his laziness, his arrogance. I had even tolerated his disrespect toward me because I believed that deep down, underneath the layers of entitlement, there was still a human being. But looking at that bruise on Sammy's arm, I realized I was wrong. There was no human being there. There was only a predator. And you do not negotiate with predators. You put them down. Sullivan, I said without turning around. Change the classification of the file. Change it to what Conrad Sullivan asked. It is no longer a civil matter, I said. It is no longer a financial dispute. It is criminal. I turned to face him. The look on my face must have been terrifying because for the first time in 30 years, Sullivan took a step back. I want charges pressed, I said. Kidnapping, child endangerment, assault, extortion, wire fraud. Construct a RICO case if you have to. I want him buried, Sullivan. I want him under the jail. Sullivan nodded slowly, pulling out his phone. The district attorney owes us a favor from the election campaign. I can have a warrant issued within the hour. No, I stopped him. Not yet. Why not? Sullivan asked. We have the evidence. We can send the SWAT team to the motel right now. Because if we send the police now, Jason will panic, I said. He has Sammy. If he sees the flashing lights, he might run. He might use the boy as a shield. He might hurt him again. Jason is a coward, and cowards are dangerous when they are cornered. We have to separate them. I continued pacing the length of the room. We have to get Sammy away from him before the hammer drops. How? Sullivan asked. We give him what he wants, I said. He wants me. He wants the senile old man. He wants to trap me in a medical facility. I walked back to the screen and looked at the frozen image of the bruise one last time. I etched it into my memory. I would carry that image with me to my grave. It would be the fuel that burned away any last trace of mercy I had for my son. Leak it, I said. Leak what Sullivan asked. Leak my location, I said. Call that dirty private investigator Jason hired. Russo. Call him anonymously. Tell him you saw Conrad King checking into City General Hospital under a false name. Tell him I looked confused. Tell him I was asking for my son. Sullivan's eyes widened. You want to lure them to the hospital? It is the only way, I said. A hospital is a public place. It has security. It has cameras. And most importantly, it has doctors. Real doctors. Not the hacks Jason hires. If Jason thinks he has found me, he will bring Sammy, I explained. He will bring him to guilt me. He will bring him to the hospital to play the role of the relieved family. And the moment he walks into that lobby with the boy, he loses his leverage. And then Sullivan asked. And then I will be waiting, I said. I went into the bedroom of the penthouse. On the bed laid out like armor was my best suit. A bespoke charcoal wool 3-piece suit from Savile Row. A crisp white shirt with French cuffs. A silk tie in deep crimson. I stripped off the thrift store clothes I had been wearing. I threw them into the trash. They belonged to the old man in the basement. That man was dead. I dressed slowly, methodically. I fastened the platinum cufflinks. I tied the tie with a perfect Windsor knot. I put on the Patek Philippe watch that I had kept hidden in a safety deposit box for 5 years. I looked in the mirror. Conrad King stared back. The shark. The builder. The destroyer. I walked back out to the living room. Sullivan was on the phone, his voice low and urgent. He hung up when he saw me. The bait is taken, Sullivan said. Russo called Jason. They are leaving the motel now. They are heading to City General. They have a doctor with them. A Dr. Vane. Vane, I scoffed. The man is a butcher. Jason is bringing a butcher to verify my sanity. The irony is rich. I poured myself a glass of scotch. I did not drink it. I just held the crystal glass, feeling the weight of it. Sullivan, I said. When we get to the hospital, I want you to have the papers ready, not the lawsuit. The adoption papers. Sullivan paused. You are going to take custody. I am going to save him, I corrected. His mother stood by and watched him get pinched. She helped film the video. She is just as guilty. They have forfeited their rights. We will need a judge to sign off on an emergency order, Sullivan warned. It will be difficult. Get Judge Miller, I said. Remind him who paid for his daughter's rehab. Remind him who kept his name out of the papers when he crashed his car. Call in every marker, Sullivan. Burn every bridge if you have to. I do not care if I have to buy the courthouse. I am leaving that hospital with my grandson. Understood, Sullivan said, typing furiously on his tablet. I walked to the elevator. The private car was waiting downstairs. Let us go, I said. We rode down in silence. The city was wet and gray outside the tinted windows of the limousine. I watched the people hurrying along the sidewalks, heads down against the rain. They had their own problems, their own families, their own small tragedies. But none of them knew what it was like to have to destroy their own child to save their grandchild. We arrived at the hospital. I did not go to the waiting room. I went to the administrator's office. Dr. Aris was an old friend. He looked nervous when I walked in. Conrad, he said, shaking my hand. This is highly irregular, using my hospital as a trap. It is necessary, John, I said. And do not worry. The endowment I promised for the new pediatric wing. Double it. Dr. Aris swallowed. Very well. The lobby is secure. My security team is briefed. We have plainclothes officers waiting in the cafeteria. Good, I said. I sat in the leather chair behind the desk. I watched the monitors that showed the main entrance. 10 minutes passed, 20, and then a battered rental car pulled up to the curb. Jason got out. He looked manic. His eyes were wild, his movements jerky. He was wearing the same ruined suit from the day before. Valerie got out from the passenger side, dragging Sammy by the hand. Sammy looked small. He looked defeated. He was holding a toy car, clutching it like a talisman. And behind them, a man in a cheap suit carrying a medical bag. Dr. Vane. They walked through the sliding glass doors. Jason scanned the lobby. He looked desperate. He looked like a man who was seconds away from drowning. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. Showtime, I whispered. I walked out of the office and down the corridor toward the lobby. Sullivan walked beside me. I saw Jason spot me. His face lit up, not with relief, but with a twisted triumph. He pointed at me. There he is, he shouted. Dad. Dad, wait. He started running toward me, dragging Sammy along. Valerie followed her heels, clicking on the linoleum. I stopped in the center of the lobby. I stood tall. I did not look confused. I did not look frail. I looked like the man who owned the building. Jason slowed down as he got closer. He saw the suit. He saw the watch. He saw the way I was standing. Confusion flickered in his eyes. Dad, he panted. Thank God. We were so worried. You wandered off. You are sick. He signaled to Dr. Vane. Doctor, this is him. He is having an episode. You need to sedate him before he hurts himself. Dr. Vane stepped forward, reaching into his bag. Mr. King, he said, his voice oily. I am here to help. Just relax. I have something that will calm you down. He pulled out a syringe. I did not move. I looked at Jason. I looked at the syringe. And then I looked at Sammy. Sammy looked up at me. Grandpa, he whispered. Come here, Sammy, I said. My voice was calm, authoritative. It carried across the lobby. Sammy tried to pull away from his father. No, Jason tightened his grip on the boy's shoulder. Stay here, Sammy. Grandpa is sick. Let him go, Jason, I said. Or what? Jason sneered. You will cut my allowance again. You have nothing, Dad. You are a senile old man and I am your legal guardian. Doctor, give him the shot. Dr. Vane uncapped the needle. That was the mistake. I nodded to the side. From the cafeteria entrance, 4 uniformed police officers stepped out. From the gift shop, 2 more appeared. Drop the needle, Dr. Vane, a sergeant shouted, his hand on his holster. Vane froze. He dropped the syringe. It clattered on the floor. Jason spun around. What is this? What is going on? I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. What is going on, Jason, is that you walked into the wrong room. I looked him in the eye. You touched him, I said, my voice low and dangerous. You put your hands on him to hurt him. I pointed to the bruise on Sammy's arm. That marks the end of my mercy. Officers, I said, turning to the police. Take him. Jason tried to back away, but he bumped into Valerie, who was already trembling. You cannot arrest me, Jason screamed. He is my father. This is a family matter. It is a criminal matter, Sullivan said, stepping forward with a file in his hand. Kidnapping, conspiracy to commit fraud, and assault on a minor. The officers moved in. They grabbed Jason. They grabbed Valerie. Sammy pulled free. He ran to me. I caught him. I held him tight, burying his face in my expensive suit so he would not have to see his parents being handcuffed. It is okay, Sammy, I whispered, stroking his hair. It is over. Grandpa is here. I looked over Sammy's head at Jason as they dragged him away. He was screaming, crying, begging. Dad, please. I am your son. I looked at him with eyes as cold as the grave. No, I said. You are just a bad investment. And as the automatic doors slid shut behind them, cutting off his screams, I felt the weight of the last 5 years lift. I held my grandson's hand. Let us go get some ice cream, Sammy, I said. I think we both earned it. The private office of the hospital administrator, Dr. Eris, was dimly lit, the blinds drawn against the gray morning rain. I sat in a high-backed leather chair, watching the security monitors that lined the wall like the eyes of a silent god. Beside me, Sullivan adjusted his cufflinks, his face a mask of professional detachment. We were the spiders sitting in the center of the web, waiting for the vibration of the thread. It was time to make the call. Sullivan picked up a burner phone. He dialed the number for Russo, the disgraced private investigator Jason had hired in his desperation. I signaled for silence, though the room was already quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Mr. Russo, Sullivan said, his voice changing pitch, slightly becoming rougher, more urgent. I have a tip on the King case. I watched Sullivan work. He was a master. He did not give the information away too easily. He made Russo work for it. He pretended to be a concerned hospital orderly, a man who wanted a reward, a man who had seen a confused old billionaire wandering the geriatric ward. He is here, Sullivan whispered into the phone. He checked in under a pseudonym, but I recognized him from the news. He is talking to himself. He thinks it is 1980. He is asking for his son. If you want him, you better hurry before security realizes who he is and moves him. Sullivan hung up and destroyed the SIM card, snapping it in half with a dry crack. The bait is in the water, he said. Now we wait. I leaned forward, staring at the screen that showed the hospital entrance. I tried to imagine what was happening on the other side of the city in that cheap motel room. I could see Jason's phone ringing. I could see him answering, listening, his face transforming from defeat to manic triumph. I could see him grabbing Valerie by the arm. I could see him shaking Dr. Vane awake. We got him, Jason would be screaming. We got the old man. They would not see a trap. They would see a lifeline. They would see a way to reverse the eviction, to unlock the accounts, to erase the last 48 hours of humiliation. They would think that if they could just get a needle in my arm and a signature on a piece of paper, they could rewrite reality. It was pitiful. It was also dangerous. Dr. Aris walked into the room. He looked nervous, wiping sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. "Conrad," he said, "are you sure about this? Bringing a confrontation like this into my hospital? If there is violence—" "There will be no violence, John," I assured him, though my eyes never left the screens. "Only justice. My security team is hidden in the cafeteria. The police are on standby in the parking garage. This ends today." Dr. Aris nodded and left, closing the door softly. 20 minutes passed, then 30, and then I saw it. A battered rental sedan careened into the drop-off zone, ignoring the signs for ambulances only. It screeched to a halt half on the curb. "Here we go," I whispered. The driver's door flew open. Jason stepped out. He looked like a man possessed. His expensive suit was wrinkled and stained from sleeping in it. His tie was loose, his hair wild. He looked like a junkie looking for a fix, but the fix he needed was power. He ran around to the passenger side and yanked the door open. Valerie stepped out. She had tried to fix her makeup, but she looked hard and brittle. She was dragging Sammy. My heart clenched when I saw the boy. He looked exhausted, terrified. He was the prop in their play, the emotional battering ram they intended to use to break down my defenses. And then the back door opened. Dr. Vane emerged. He was a small, oily man clutching a black medical bag to his chest, as if it contained gold. In a way it did. It contained the sedatives and the chemical restraints that were going to be Jason's ticket back to the high life. I watched them march toward the automatic sliding doors. Jason was shouting orders at them, pointing at the entrance. He was the general of a ragtag army marching into a massacre. They entered the lobby. I watched Jason scan the room. His eyes were darting back and forth, frantic. He was looking for a confused old man. He was looking for a victim. He went to the reception desk. I turned up the volume on the audio feed. "Where is he?" Jason slammed his hand on the counter. "Conrad King. He was admitted an hour ago. Do not lie to me. I am his son. I am his medical proxy." The receptionist, a woman I had briefed personally, looked at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Sir, please lower your voice," she said. "Mr. King is in the East Wing solarium." He was very agitated. "We are waiting for a specialist." "I have the specialist right here," Jason gestured to Dr. Vane. "We are going up." He turned away from the desk, grabbing Sammy's hand so hard the boy stumbled. "Come on," Jason hissed at his group, "before he leaves." I stood up in the office. I buttoned my jacket. I checked my reflection in the glass of the window. I did not look like a victim. I looked like the man who built the skyline visible through the rain. "Let us go, Sullivan," I said. We walked out of the administrator's office and down the long corridor that led to the solarium. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor, a steady rhythmic drumbeat. I could hear them ahead of me. I could hear Jason's heavy breathing. I could hear Valerie's heels clicking rapidly. I could hear the soft whimper of my grandson. They were rushing toward the East Wing, thinking they were hunting a ghost. They turned the corner into the solarium, a wide open space filled with plants and sunlight that filtered through the rain-soaked glass ceiling. It was empty. Jason stopped in the center of the room, spinning around. "Where is he?" he shouted. "He was supposed to be here." Valerie looked around, panic rising in her eyes. "Jason, this feels wrong. There is no one here. It is too quiet." "Check the rooms," Jason ordered Dr. Vane. "He is hiding. He is scared. Have the syringe ready. As soon as you see him, hit him." "I do not want him talking. I do not want a scene. I just want him unconscious and signed over." Dr. Vane opened his bag, his hands shaking slightly as he prepared a vial. I stepped out from behind the pillar at the far end of the room. "You are looking for me, Jason," I said. My voice carried across the empty space, calm and cold. Jason spun around. He saw me. For a second he looked relieved. He saw the father he wanted to control, but then his eyes adjusted. He saw the suit. He saw the posture. He saw that I was not cowering in a corner, confused and senile. I was standing center stage, waiting for him. "Dad," he breathed. "Thank God." He started to move toward me, putting on the mask of the concerned son. "Dad, you had us so worried. You wandered off. You are not well." He gestured behind his back to Dr. Vane, signaling him to flank me. "Just stay there, Dad," Jason said, his voice taking on a soothing, predatory tone. "We are here to help. We brought a doctor. He is going to give you something to make you feel better. Then we can go home. We can sign the papers and everything will be back to normal." He took another step. I did not move. I just looked at him. I looked at the son I had raised, the boy I had loved, and I saw nothing but a stranger who would sell my soul for a bank transfer. "You brought a doctor," I said, my eyes flicking to Vane, who was creeping closer, the syringe hidden in his palm. "Or did you bring an executioner?" Jason faltered. "What?" "No, Dad. You are confused. This is for your own good." I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "My own good," I repeated. "Like the nursing home was for my own good. Like stealing my money was for my own good." Jason froze. His face went slack. "How do you know about that?" he whispered. "Because I know everything, Jason," I said. "I know about the credit cards. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about the plan to drug me." I took a step forward. "And I know you pinched my grandson to make him cry for a video." Jason's eyes went wide. He realized then that the trap had not just sprung, it had crushed him. He looked at the exits. He looked at me. And then he made the worst decision of his life. "Do it," he screamed at Dr. Vane. "Do it now! Stick him!" Dr. Vane lunged, and the doors to the solarium burst open. The needle glistened under the fluorescent lights of the solarium, a silver fang poised to strike. Dr. Vane lunged forward, his eyes manic with the promise of a payday, but he was not aiming at me. In his panic and Jason's confusion, they had fixated on the figure sitting in the high-backed wheelchair by the window. The figure wrapped in a thick blanket, the figure they assumed was the senile old man they had come to abduct. "Do it!" Jason screamed again, his voice cracking with desperation. "Stick him before he makes a noise." Vane brought the syringe down in a vicious arc, aiming for the neck of the man in the chair. But the needle never made contact. In a blur of motion, the man in the wheelchair spun around. The blanket fell away, revealing not a frail 72-year-old pensioner, but a 6'2" undercover police sergeant wearing a tactical vest. He caught Vane's wrist in mid-air with a grip like a steel vise. "Police," the sergeant roared, twisting Vane's arm until the bone snapped with a sickening crunch. "Drop the weapon!" Vane shrieked, dropping the syringe as he was slammed face first onto the tiled floor. At that exact moment, the glass doors on all sides of the solarium shattered inward. A dozen officers in tactical gear swarmed the room, their weapons drawn, their voices a cacophony of controlled chaos. "Get on the ground. Nobody move. Hands where I can see them." Jason froze. He looked at the sergeant who was handcuffing the screaming doctor. He looked at the syringe rolling on the floor, leaking its clear chemical poison. He looked at the police officers surrounding him. His brain could not process the shift in reality. One second he was the predator closing in on his prey, and the next he was the rat in the trap. Valerie screamed as a female officer grabbed her arm, pulling her away from Sammy. "Do not touch me," she yelled, struggling. "I am a mother. I have rights." "You have the right to remain silent," the officer said, spinning her around and cuffing her hands behind her back. Sammy stood in the center of the storm, terrified and crying. Sullivan, who had entered with the police team, moved quickly. He scooped the boy up, shielding his eyes, wrapping his expensive suit jacket around the child's shaking shoulders, and carrying him out of the room to safety before the scene got any uglier. Jason was backed against the glass wall, his hands raised, trembling violently. "This is a mistake," he stammered, looking around wildly. "I am Jason King. I was just trying to help my father. He is sick. That man attacked my doctor." "Save it for the judge, Jason," a voice boomed from the far end of the room. The heavy oak doors of the hospital administrator's private office opened. I stepped out. I was not the man in the wheelchair. I was not the confused geriatric patient wandering the halls. I was wearing my charcoal Savile Row suit, my platinum cufflinks catching the light. I walked with the steady, powerful stride of the man who had built an empire from dust. I walked through the line of police officers who parted for me out of respect. Jason saw me. His jaw dropped. He looked from me to the empty wheelchair and back again. "Dad," he whispered, "you set me up." I stopped 3 feet in front of him. I looked him up and down, taking in his disheveled appearance, his fear, his pathetic arrogance. "I did not set you up, Jason," I said, my voice calm and cold as a winter ocean. "I gave you a choice. You could have walked away. You could have accepted your new life. You could have been a man. But you chose to come here. You chose to bring a butcher to silence your own father." I pulled my phone from my pocket. I did not say another word. I simply pressed play on the screen and turned the volume up to the maximum. The audio was crystal clear, recorded just 24 hours earlier in the motel room. We pump him full of Thorazine. We make him compliant. We put a pen in his hand and we guide his signature. We keep him medicated. He spends the rest of his days drooling at a wall. Jason's voice filled the silent solarium, plotting my destruction with casual cruelty. "If he thinks Sammy is in trouble, he will come running. Pinch him harder. Make him cry." The color drained from Jason's face, leaving him looking like a corpse. The police officers listening lowered their weapons slightly, their expressions shifting from professional alertness to pure disgust. They looked at Jason not as a suspect, but as a monster. I stopped the recording. "That is me on the tape," Jason stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "But it is out of context. We were role-playing. It was a joke. A joke I repeated. You pinched your son to make him cry. You hired a man to forge my medical records. You brought a loaded syringe to a hospital to kidnap me." "Is that the punchline, Jason?" I turned to the police captain who was standing beside me, holding the evidence bag containing the syringe. "Captain," I said, "I believe this man is trespassing, and I believe he just attempted to assault a police officer with a deadly weapon." The captain nodded, his face grim. "Book him." 2 officers grabbed Jason. They did not utilize the gentle touch. They slammed him against the glass wall, kicking his legs apart. They ratcheted the handcuffs on tight. "Ow!" Jason screamed. "You are hurting me. Dad, tell them to stop. Dad, help me." He looked at me, his eyes pleading, desperate, begging for the father he had despised for 5 years to save him one last time. "Dad, please," he sobbed. "I am your son." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had thrown away my gift, who had stolen my money, who had hurt my grandson. I stepped closer until I was inches from his face. "You are not my son," I whispered, so only he could hear. "My son died the day he decided my life was worth less than his bank account. You are just a stranger who owes me $18 million. Take him away," I said to the officers. They dragged him out. He was weeping, his expensive shoes dragging on the floor, leaving scuff marks that would be buffed out by morning. Just like him. He was a stain that was being removed. Valerie was led out behind him, still shouting about her rights, still trying to blame everyone else. She did not look at me. She knew better. The room fell silent. The adrenaline faded, leaving only a deep exhaustion. Sullivan walked back in. "The boy is safe," he said quietly. "He is with the social worker in the cafeteria. He is asking for you, Conrad. I nodded. I adjusted my tie. I checked my reflection in the glass. I am coming, I said. I walked out of the solarium, leaving the empty wheelchair and the broken syringe behind. The trap had sprung. The rats were caught. Now it was time to clean up the mess. It took Jason exactly 4 hours to post bail. He did not use his own money because he had none left. He used a bail bondsman who took the pink slip to Valerie's Mercedes, the only asset I had not yet seized, because it was technically in her name. It was a desperate move, a short-term gamble made by a man who believed he could talk his way out of an avalanche. I expected him to run. I expected him to flee the state to try and disappear before the criminal charges stuck. But I had underestimated his delusion. Jason did not run. He attacked. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I was served with an emergency injunction. Jason was suing me. The audacity was breathtaking. The filing claimed that I, Conrad King, had unlawfully seized assets belonging to the acting CEO, that I was suffering from acute paranoia and dementia, and that my actions constituted a breach of fiduciary duty. He was not just defending himself. He was trying to strip me of my power before the criminal investigation could gain traction. The emergency hearing was set for 10 a.m. before a duty judge in family court. It was a closed session, but the tension in the hallway was thick enough to choke on. I sat on the wooden bench outside the courtroom, flanked by Sullivan and 2 security guards. I looked calm, but inside my blood was boiling. Jason arrived minutes later. He had showered and changed. He was no longer the disheveled maniac who had screamed in the hospital lobby. He was wearing a navy blue suit, a modest tie, and an expression of pained concern. He looked like a choir boy who had been wrongly accused. Valerie walked beside him wearing a simple gray dress and no jewelry, clutching a tissue. They were in costume. They were playing the role of the loving family, besieged by tragedy. Jason stopped when he saw me. He did not scream. He did not lunge. He looked at me with eyes that shimmered with unshed tears. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling perfectly. "Why are you doing this? We just want you to get help." I did not answer. I simply looked at him. I looked at the performance, and I wondered if he even knew where the lie ended and the truth began. We went inside. The courtroom was small, smelling of floor wax and old paper. The judge was a stern woman named Judge Halloway, who looked like she had no patience for drama. Jason's lawyer, a man named Blackwood, stood up. He was expensive. I wondered who Jason had promised to pay him. Probably me, once he regained control of the accounts. "Your Honor," Blackwood began, his voice smooth as oil. "We are here today because a tragedy is unfolding. My client, Mr. Jason King, has spent the last 5 years tirelessly running King Logistics while caring for his aging father. He has sacrificed his own well-being to ensure his father was comfortable." I watched Jason. He hung his head modestly. 2 days ago, Blackwood, continued, Conrad King suffered a severe mental break. He disappeared from the family home. In his confusion, he accessed corporate accounts and transferred millions of dollars to overseas entities. He canceled the family's credit cards, leaving his son and grandson destitute. He even staged a scene at a hospital using his own wealth to bribe officials and frame his son for assault. It was a masterpiece of fiction. It took every fact and twisted it until I was the villain and Jason was the martyr. Then Jason took the stand. He sat in the witness box, his hands folded in his lap. He looked at the judge with wide, earnest eyes. "I love my father," Jason said softly. "He has always been my hero. But lately he has changed. He forgets things. He gets angry over small details. The other night, he gave my son a $50 bond for his birthday. It was sweet, but it showed he is living in the past. When I tried to talk to him about it, he snapped. He ran away. He wiped a tear from his eye. I went to the hospital to find him, Jason continued, his voice cracking. I brought a doctor because I was scared. I thought he might hurt himself. And then he had me arrested. He humiliated me. Your Honor, I do not care about the money. I just want my father back. I want him safe. I want him home where I can take care of him. Valerie let out a soft sob from the gallery. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Sullivan. He was squeezing my forearm hard, a signal to remain stone-faced. The judge looked at me. She saw an old man in a nice suit sitting silently. She looked at Jason, the grieving son. I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. Jason was good. He was a sociopath, but he was a charming one. Then Jason dropped his final card. He is accusing me of stealing, Jason said. But Your Honor, how can I steal what is mine? I built that company for the last 5 years. I earned that lifestyle. My father is using his money to abuse me. This is financial violence. He is abandoning his family. He is leaving us on the street to punish me for a crime I did not commit. Financial violence. The term hung in the air. He was weaponizing his own entitlement. Sullivan stood up. He did not shout. He did not make a speech. He simply walked to the podium. Your Honor, Sullivan said, his voice dry and bored. The plaintiff claims he is a victim. He claims he is a loving son. He claims his father is incompetent. Sullivan picked up a remote control. We would like to submit a piece of evidence to refute these claims. It is an audio recording taken 48 hours ago. Jason stiffened in the witness box. He knew what was coming. He looked at Blackwood, but his lawyer looked confused. They thought the only recording was the one from the motel room, the one I had played at the hospital. But they forgot that I was the grantor. They forgot that I owned the house. They forgot that the security system in the library, where Jason liked to drink his scotch and brag to his friends, recorded audio as well as video. Sullivan pressed play. The sound of clinking glass filled the courtroom. Then Jason's voice, loud and slurred, drunk on my expensive liquor. The old man is a leech. He is taking too long to die. I talked to Vane. We can up the dosage. Make his heart stop. Who is going to autopsy a 72-year-old man? We just need to make it look natural. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. It was heavier than the silence in the basement. It was the silence of a grave being opened. Jason's face went gray. He gripped the railing of the witness box so hard his knuckles turned white. That is a fabrication, he stammered. That is AI. Deepfake. Judge Holloway looked at him. Her expression had changed from curiosity to cold fury. Sit down, Mr. King, she said. But Your Honor, Jason stood up. Sit down, she barked. She turned to Sullivan. Continue, counselor. Sullivan nodded. We have more, Your Honor. We have the bank records showing the embezzlement. We have the video of him assaulting his son. But I think the court has heard enough to establish the character of the plaintiff. Jason looked at me. The mask was gone. The loving son was gone. There was only hatred, pure and undiluted. You set me up, he mouthed. I looked back at him. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just looked at him with the weary eyes of a man who had finally accepted the truth. The judge banged her gavel. Motion for injunction denied, she ruled. Motion for guardianship denied. Mr. King, you are remanded into custody for violation of your bail conditions pending the criminal investigation into conspiracy to commit murder. The bailiff moved toward Jason. Jason stood up. He looked around the room looking for an exit, looking for a savior. He looked at Valerie. She looked away. She was already plotting her own survival, already figuring out how to distance herself from the sinking ship. No, Jason screamed as the bailiff grabbed his arm. No, this is wrong. I am the victim. He is the monster. He pointed at me. He is not even my father. Jason shrieked, his mind snapping under the pressure of the collapse. He hates me because I am better than him. The words echoed in the room. He is not even my father. He meant it as an insult. He meant it metaphorically. But as I watched them drag him away, kicking and screaming, I reached into my pocket and touched the folded piece of paper Sullivan had given me that morning. The paper I had been saving for the final blow. He was right. I was not his father. And it was time for him to know why. "Wait," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos of the courtroom like a gavel strike. The bailiffs paused, their grip still tight on Jason's arms. Judge Holloway looked at me over her spectacles. The room went silent. The only sound was Jason's ragged breathing. He looked at me with wild eyes, his hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. He had just screamed that I was not his father. He had meant it to hurt me. He had meant it to distance himself from the monster he thought I was. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. I did not pull out a weapon. I pulled out a sealed envelope. It was old. The edges were yellowed with age, the paper brittle. It had been sealed with wax 40 years ago, and it had never been opened. Sullivan handed me a letter opener. "Your Honor," I said, stepping forward. "The plaintiff has made a statement. He claims I am not his father. I would like to enter a final piece of evidence into the record. It is a document that has been in my private safe since 1984. I slit the envelope open. The sound was loud in the quiet room. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a paternity test report from a lab that no longer existed, signed by a doctor who was long dead. I walked over to Jason. The bailiffs stepped back slightly, allowing me into his personal space. "Read it, Jason," I said, holding the paper up. Jason looked at the paper. His eyes scanned the lines. He blinked. He shook his head. He read it again. "Probability of paternity 0%. The blood drained from his face so fast, I thought he was going to faint. He looked up at me, his mouth opening and closing without sound. "I do not understand," he whispered. "Mom." Mom said. "Your mother was a wonderful woman," I said, my voice softening just a fraction for the memory of Catherine. "But she was human. She made a mistake 40 years ago. She had an affair, Jason, with a tennis instructor in the Hamptons. When she found out she was pregnant, she was terrified. She told me the truth on her deathbed." I turned to the judge. "Your Honor," I addressed the court. "When my wife died, I made a promise. I promised her I would raise this boy as my own. I promised I would give him my name, my home, and my love. I promised I would never let him know that he was not a king by blood." I looked back at Jason. "I kept that promise for 40 years, I said. "I gave you every opportunity. I gave you the best schools. I gave you the company. I gave you a life most men only dream of. All I asked in return was respect. All I asked was that you be a good man." I leaned in closer. "But you broke the contract, Jason. You broke it when you stole from me. You broke it when you tried to drug me. And you broke it when you hurt my grandson. The promise is void." Jason slumped in the arms of the bailiffs. He looked small. He looked like a child who had gotten lost in a mall. This means," he stammered. "It means you have no standing." Sullivan interjected, his voice sharp. "The King family trust is explicit. Beneficiaries must be direct biological descendants of Conrad King. You are not a beneficiary, Jason. You are a stranger. You have no claim to the money, no claim to the house, no claim to the legacy. You are just a man who committed fraud." Jason let out a sound that was half sob, half laugh. It was the sound of a mind snapping. "I am nobody," he whispered. "No," I corrected him. "You could have been somebody. You could have been my son. Blood does not make a father, Jason. Love does. And you killed that love." I nodded to the bailiffs. Get him out of my sight. They dragged him away. He did not fight this time. He went limp, his feet dragging on the floor. He stared at the ceiling, his eyes empty. He had lost his fortune, his freedom, and now his identity. He was a hollow shell. But I was not done. I turned my attention to the gallery where Valerie was sitting. She had been trying to make herself invisible, shrinking into the wooden bench. When Jason was dragged out, she stood up quickly, smoothing her skirt. She looked at me, then at Sullivan, then at the door. She was calculating. She was running the numbers. Mr. King, she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. Conrad, I did not know about the DNA, about any of it. Sit down, Valerie, I said. She froze. I am not finished, I said. Sullivan stepped forward, opening a new file. This one was thick. It was the forensic accounting report. We are moving for an immediate indictment on embezzlement charges, Sullivan announced to the room. During his tenure as CEO, Jason King misappropriated $5 million of company funds. He purchased 3 Ferraris, which he listed as office equipment. He spent $2 million on private jets for personal vacations listed as site inspections. And he spent another $1 million on escorts and high-stakes poker games listed as consulting fees. Valerie gasped. She put a hand to her mouth. He told me those were bonuses, she cried. He told me he earned that money. Ignorance is not a defense, Mrs. King, Sullivan said. You spent the money too. The handbags, the jewelry, the spa trips. You are a co-conspirator. Valerie's eyes darted around the room. She saw the judge watching her. She saw the stenographer typing every word. She saw the walls closing in. I will testify, she blurted out. The room went quiet again. I will testify against him, she said, her voice rising in pitch. I will tell you everything. I will tell you about the plan to drug you. I will tell you about the forgery. I will give you the dates, the times, everything. Just keep me out of prison. I have a son. I have Sammy. I need to be there for Sammy. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had stood by while my son pinched my grandson. I looked at the woman who had called me a useless old man. She was trying to trade my son's life for her freedom. It was predictable. It was disgusting. You want to make a deal? I asked. Yes. Valerie nodded frantically, walking toward the railing. I am a victim here, Conrad. He manipulated me. He forced me. I am a good mother. Sammy needs me. Sullivan looked at me. He waited for my signal. I pulled the remote control from my pocket again. You are right, Valerie, I said. We should talk about Sammy. I pointed the remote at the screen mounted on the wall of the courtroom. I have one more video, Your Honor, I said. I pressed play. The video was from the security camera in the kitchen of the mansion, taken 3 weeks ago. Sullivan had recovered it from the cloud server before he locked Jason out. It showed Sammy sitting at the kitchen island doing his homework. He looked happy. He was eating a bowl of cereal. Valerie walked into the frame. She was on the phone holding a glass of wine. She looked angry. She hung up the phone and slammed it onto the counter. She turned to Sammy. Stop eating so loud, she screamed at him. Sammy flinched. I am sorry, Mom. She grabbed the bowl of cereal and threw it into the sink. It shattered. You are useless, she yelled. Just like your grandfather. Always eating, always taking up space. Why can't you be perfect? Why do you have to be so stupid? Sammy started to cry. Stop crying, Valerie hissed. She grabbed his face, squeezing his cheeks with her long, manicured nails. If you cry, I will give you something to cry about. You ruin everything. I wish I never had you. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. Judge Holloway looked physically ill. She looked at Valerie with a mixture of horror and fury. Valerie was shaking her head. That was a bad day. I was stressed. I didn't mean it. You told a 10-year-old boy you wished he was never born. I said, my voice shaking with rage. You terrorized him, you bullied him, and when Jason pinched him to make him cry for that video, you held the camera. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I am petitioning for full and immediate custody of Samuel King. Both parents have demonstrated a pattern of abuse, neglect, and criminal behavior. They are unfit. Judge Holloway did not hesitate. She slammed her gavel down so hard it cracked the wood. Petition granted, she ruled. Emergency custody is awarded to Conrad King, effective immediately. The mother is to be remanded into custody pending charges of child abuse and conspiracy. Bail is denied. No, Valerie screamed as the bailiff moved toward her. You can't take him. He is my son. He is my grandson, I said. And you will never hurt him again. They handcuffed her. She fought, screaming, cursing, spitting. She looked at me with eyes full of venom. I hope you die, old man, she shrieked. I hope you die alone. I watched them drag her out. I am not alone, I said to the empty air. I have Sammy. I walked out of the courtroom. Sullivan packed up his files. It is over, Conrad, he said. Yes, I said. It is over. I walked out into the hallway. Sammy was sitting on a bench next to a social worker. He was playing with a small toy car. He looked up when he saw me. Grandpa, he said. I knelt down. My knees popped, but I didn't care. I opened my arms. Sammy ran to me. He buried his face in my neck. He smelled like rain and childhood. Are they coming back? He asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. No, Sammy, I whispered, holding him tight. They are not coming back. You are safe now. Where are we going? He asked, looking up at me with those big, trusting eyes. We are going to see a boat, I said. A very big boat. I stood up, holding his hand. I looked at Sullivan. Prepare the jet, I said. We are going to the island. Sullivan nodded. And the bond, I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the $50 bond. It was now encased in a simple gold frame I had commissioned that morning. I handed it to Sammy. This is yours, I said. Sammy looked at it. Is it worth $50, Grandpa? I smiled. It is worth everything, Sammy, because it cost me a fortune to save it. And it taught us the most important lesson of all. That the value is not in the number on the paper, I said, walking him toward the exit. The value is in how you earn it, and how you keep it. We walked out into the sunlight. The rain had stopped. The city, washed clean, looked bright and new. I left the courthouse without looking back. I left my son in a cell. I left my daughter-in-law in a holding pen. I left the toxicity, the greed, and the lies behind. 2 days later, we stood on the deck of the Liberty, my new yacht anchored off the coast of a private island in the Caribbean. The water was turquoise, the sand white. Sammy was fishing off the side, laughing as he reeled in a small snapper. I sat in a deck chair watching him. I had lost a son, but I had saved a grandson. It was a heavy price, but I would pay it again in a heartbeat. I took a sip of iced tea. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sullivan. Sentencing set for next month. They are both looking at 15 years minimum. Jason is asking for a meeting. I typed a reply. Request denied. I put the phone away. I watched Sammy release the fish back into the water. Let him go, Grandpa Sammy shouted. He wants to be free. Yes, Sammy, I said, closing my eyes and feeling the sun on my face. We all want to be free. And for the first time in 5 years, I finally was. Throughout my life, I believed that building an empire was my greatest achievement. I was wrong. Wealth is nothing but a magnifying glass. It reveals who you truly are. For Jason and Valerie, it amplified their greed and cruelty. For me, it became the sword I needed to sever the ties that were strangling my family. I learned that blood does not define loyalty, and DNA does not guarantee love. True legacy isn't written in a ledger or a will. It is written in the safety and happiness of the next generation. Sometimes the hardest thing a parent must do is let go of the child who has lost their way to save the child who still has a chance. If you believe that family is defined by love and respect, rather than just blood, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to make a difficult choice to cut off a toxic family member to protect your peace? I read every story.